My own relationship to these practices have to be considered. On one hand, I'm a practicing artist. I work in this field. I take commissions. I take grants. I'm a willing participant in the economy of its production. At the same time, I'm an academic who runs a program that trains artists to think in these ways or to work in these contexts. And at the same time, I'm a writer who's trying to take some distance from these things and think about them outside of the markets and institutions that are sort of creating and sort of continuing to move them forward. I'd like to start with a familiar performance, The Blizzard Ball Sale by David Hammons from 1983, a performance piece in which Hammons situates himself alongside street vendors in downtown Manhattan, specifically Cooper Square, in order to sell snowballs, which are priced according to size. This act serves both as a parody on commodity exchange and a commentary on the capitalistic nature of art fostered by art galleries. The collaborative group Colectivo Cambalache was founded in Bogota, Colombia in 1999 with a specific interest in exploring direct exchange and cultural recycling as an artistic strategy. Their project, Museo de Kayak, began in the streets of Bogota, where the collective members made a street cart modeled on the types of carts used by street recyclers or peddlers, which functioned as an open space for bartering. Goods held within the cart could be freely traded between the collective members, the audience. The only prohibition was that money was not to be used for any of these exchanges. Michael Swain, The Free Mending Library, 2002, and ongoing. Once a month for the past 11 years, San Francisco artist Michael Swain has mended clothing for free on the streets of San Francisco's Tenderloin neighborhood. At first, he did a 5-mile route through the city from dusk to dawn with a sewing machine covered by an umbrella on wheelbarrow wheels. He loved that route, but it was exhausting, and often people didn't have their torn clothes with them when he rolled by. So he eventually settled down in front of the the sort of local art gallery called the Luggage Store in the Tenderloin neighborhood. He's become so committed to the project that he's only missed 3 months out of more than 130 possible months where he could be mending clothing on the street. The final work I want to just put forward is by the Italian artist Cesare Pietro Iusti. It's a piece called Money Watching from 2007. Money Watching was a one-day event held in a regular shop in a commercial area of Birmingham, England. This shop sold, for a limited time, a number of 10 and 20 pound British banknotes. In order to purchase such items, the customer was required to look at both sides of the bill for a determined amount of time. 15 minutes or 7 minutes and 30 seconds on each side for a 10-pound note, 25 minutes, which was 12 and a half minutes on each side for the $20 bill. In many ways, the artist wanted to create a meditation on value on a shopping street that was failing. Most of these storefronts were closed in Birmingham, and so there was ample sort of room to insert something like a pop-up shop, like we see in gentrified neighborhoods. But this pop-up shop sort of reverses the meditation on value that most economies and stores put forward. The works share a similar range of inquiry, which could be roughly broken down into 3 highly overlapping zones. I would suggest that most of these considerations revolve around the relations that the work and the projects create between the local world or site or community, or however it's sort of termed in terms of how they were located or sort of begun, and about how those relations then are mediated with the art world, which either witnesses their documentation as representations within a museum or perhaps as a spectacle that audiences are invited to come witness in the street or in their location. But as I was saying, I think there's sort of a central set of concerns that could be broken down into a few different groups. One is, I think, the investigation or critical consideration of the social, which in this case might be the legal or traditional or professional position of the artist or art project within a particular private or public context, in terms of like how does an art project insert itself into a situation that is perhaps a normal social situation like a store or a comic book or something like that, and then sort of change that. How does this actual presence of it being an art project alter its function or alter its meaning? More recently, at least in the United States context, I think that these works that this sort of critical framework has moved on to ideas about whether activism and art can be aligned between themselves, and about that there is always in the social realm or the public sphere, there's an activist agenda that seems to be inherent in kind of the critical relations that these projects manifest. when it comes to artwork, that there's always an integral relationship between form and content, as sophomoric as that might sound. But any assessment of a work's efficacy is incomplete if there is no acknowledgement of the form by which it is manifested. That said, it's certainly the case that most, if not all, of the projects above that we considered are manifesting in forms that anybody would readily identify as forms that belong to artworks. However, this does not mean that these works do not have form. Rather, it means that we have to turn to other frameworks to understand the forms that they do have. And it's of particular interest, I think, for any artist working in the public sphere, largely because while we might have a difficult time explaining in critical art terms what a project is or means, it can actually be very simple to describe something in terms of saying, I created a store, right? Which, of course, we didn't talk about when we reviewed any of these works. We just started with the ideas that the artist, the location, the context, the sort of ideas of sort of the sort of critical notions of like hegemony or theory, and never led with any idea that, David Hammond, Cesare Pietruzzi, Surasi Kusawong created a shop. That was what they did. From there, what the store did or sold, or how it sold it, and especially in relationship to the stores around it, takes on a much more creative endeavor, one that is wholly within the social world at the same time. It seeks to exert pressures on the boundaries of forms around it. At a basic level, though, when we consider how this array of artist projects that we considered earlier might actually work, it often involves a bit of sleight of hand, injecting the task of one type of form into the space of another. When such social forms are taken up by artists and subsequently altered to achieve idiosyncratic or subjective ends, it's possible to become disoriented, to have moments of adjustment that require a shift in thinking and reaction. And I think in this moment of realignment that a possibility of critical exchange arises, where the form is seen not just for the moment when it is strange, but for all the prior times when we have seen that form and it was normal.